I was really looking forward to watching Steve Jobs. This had been on my to-watch list for quite a while, and subscribed to Now TV, I finally had a reason to watch it. And unfortunately, I found this to be really, really dull for a couple of key reasons. But I will say it has 7.2 out of 10 across 183,000 reviews and ratings on IMDb. So it seems to be well received. So take everything with a pinch of salt. I'm not going to pretend I enjoyed it any more than I did, but it does seem to be well received. So that's maybe worth bearing in mind. The film was released in 2015. It's much older than I thought. Directed by Danny Boyle, written by Aaron Sorkin, based on Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. And we have a cast including Michael Fassbender as Steve Jobs. We also have Kate Winslet, Seth Rogen. Really great cast. I have no problems with the performances, but there are two reasons why this didn't work for me. The film is, well, it's about Steve Jobs. It's a biographical film. I have no idea how accurate it is, how accurate the portrayal is to the real person. I'm by no means an expert on Steve Jobs, but the performance seemed pretty decent. I don't know how accurate the events are to the realities either, so if anybody has any information on that, please feel free to share. But it's set initially in the 80s, and Steve Jobs and his work with co-founding Apple, and then what his journey was like after that. And yeah, I learned a few things. Credit where it's due. I took everything with a pinch of salt, but I still did learn some things. But it was so dull and dry, and for the most part, nothing happened. Steve Jobs as a character seemed very, very boring. Nobody seemed very passionate about their work for the most part. And this is Apple. I feel like everybody loves Apple. I don't. I haven't had an Apple product in a long time. I could not care less. But I know a lot of people are very passionate about Apple, and Apple seems very passionate about Apple. And I wasn't getting any of that here. And yes, it is more focusing on Steve Jobs rather than Apple as a company, but I still expected a little bit more passion, and I just didn't get any of that. And Steve Jobs as a character was really dull. I don't mean that to be offensive, but within this film, the character was very dull. I didn't really care for him. There were a couple of times when he had maybe heightened emotions, and those performances were very strong, but he still didn't come across as being an interesting character. He didn't come across as being an interesting subject of a biographical film, I guess is the best way to put it. Whereas if they'd maybe focused on Apple in general, it could have been an interesting brand-based film. And obviously we do get some of that, but it's more about Steve Jobs. So I didn't care for it. I found the narrative to be incredibly stale. The narrative was very slow. Steve Jobs as a character within the film was not interesting enough to be engaging or to otherwise save a rather dull narrative. So I didn't find it enjoyable. Yes, I learned a few things. I definitely learned a few things. Again, taking it all with a pinch of salt. But I didn't like the experience. It's also very long. It's about 2 hours, and they could have told the story within an hour. Not that I think that would have been an acceptable length. I think it needed to be at least an hour and 20. But that being said, I don't think it's a good film. But it has 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb and a very impressive Metascore of 82. So there's an audience for it, but maybe my expectations were too high. But I am a big fan of biographical films that are based on brands or the development of a certain product. I think they're really exciting. It's great to see people being very passionate about their work and watching how they overcame various obstacles. And yeah, there are obstacles here, but they're not interesting. I found it to be very dry, very dull, and honestly not a great subject for a biography. I feel like it could have been. Maybe they could have taken a different angle with it, but in terms of what we got, I found it to be very boring. Yes, I learned a few things, but ultimately, I didn't think Steve Jobs was a very enjoyable film.